16th, 2024 committee meetings, if no amendments. Thank you. And is there a second to that? Thanks. And now we'll go into presentations. And I'll call on Ryan to present the Glenfield Complete Streets Project.
Thank you. Cassie and I are going to pinch hit for Tim Hunt today, who had to be away with some family issues. So Cassie's got the bulk of the presentation here. What I wanted to say to kick us off was that this project in Glenfield is a new approach for Lewis County. This is not something that we have done in many, many years. We have county roads that go through and make up the main streets of several of our villages and hamlets. Traditionally, the county's role in maintaining those streets has just been maintaining the pavement, okay? We have not really gotten involved in storm drainage. We have not gotten involved in street lighting or sidewalks or curbs in any way. The reality is, though, that a lot of our hamlets and villages don't have the resources to maintain those things. And since these are our roads that go through the middle of these communities, this is our first attempt to step up and take full responsibility for the right of way. So I'm not talking about water and sewer. That's still on the towns and villages, but stormwater, sidewalks, curbs, street lighting, basically everything that makes a complete street is what the county is going to step up and do. So our first project is here in Glenfield, which we're hoping to do this summer. And then if it goes well and it's something we want to continue to do, we'll look at other municipalities going forward. But the county has the main street. A county road is the main street through many of our towns and villages. Turin, Constableville, Beaver Falls, all have county roads that make up basically the main intersection of the community. So if we can step up on those areas, then we can make a pretty big difference in those communities. So that's kind of the philosophy behind this. And with that, I'll let Cassie handle some specifics.
Thank you, Ryan. And again, I'm here filling in for Tim and covering his presentation, but really building on what Ryan had said, we are really looking to implement the countywide complete streets policy, in which we are finalizing engineering designs for a lot of the hamlets and villages across the county. If it falls within a county right away, it just makes sense for us to work in those initiatives to the next upcoming projects where they're designed the correct way when it comes to drainage, when it comes to pedestrian movement and multimodal transportation. So just a prelude to Tim's presentation. So I will touch on the project team, the project background, the project objectives, the design overview of this Glenfield Hamlet Complete Streets project, the construction, and then I will take questions and I will answer them to the best of my ability. Luckily, I have been involved in many portions of this project, aside from the actual design features of the roadway resurfacing, but I have been involved in the complete streets aspect. So again, Tim prepared this presentation, so I am not on here. So Tim Hunt is the project manager, and then Kelsey Wessel of CNS is the project manager from the engineering perspective. So the project background, the length of the project is 0.9 miles. They've just updated that to me this morning, and it is actually closer to 1 mile than 0.9, if that's even possible. And it will span from Main Street through Blue Street. So you can see where it starts. The resurfacing will start at Field Day Road. And then the sidewalks will be on both sides of the road from Oliver Place, but I think it's more towards the Wicked Bad Apple is where we've started the sidewalks from. And so it'll be from Wicked Bad Apple to the intersection of Glenfield Road, Main Street, and Blue Street. And they'll be on both sides of the road there. and then from on Glenfield Road to State Route 12 and Main Street to State Route 12, those will be resurfaced. I believe that the main reason why Tim wanted to get in front of you today is to introduce you all to this project, being that we have scheduled a public meeting or a public information session with the Hamlet of Glenfield. We really thought it was important that the community and that the residents know what's going to be happening, what to expect, what complete streets even means, and because it really is more than complete streets. I mean, he's resurfacing the roadway, and quite a bit of drainage work is going in there too, to ensure that it's a long-term solution for the hamlet. So just some background. Last summer, we had started this project. And if you recall, we also applied for CDBG funding. We did not get that funding to do the complete streets portion of the project, but I have applied for other funding that hopefully we're able to add into this for assistance, but we are proceeding without knowing whether or not we have that funding. Concept development started in the fall. Right now, we're in the public meeting stage where, again, we want to make sure that the public is aware of what's happening, what to expect, what the plans are, and what this means for the community. And that'll be happening next week on February. I think I passed out the public information flyers. It'll be on February 28th from 4:30 to 6:30 p.m. at the Glenfield Elementary School. So I will be there with information. CNS will be there with the information, and Tim will be there with information. And then in the next few months, we'll move forward into the final design phase, and then finally construction starting in May. So again, here's just a visual on where there's pavement resurfacing only and when there is the full scope. So pavement resurfacing and sidewalks on both sides of the road.
Cassandra, can I add something here?
Sure.
So part of the issue here with the way we've done things in the past is if we are only responsible or we're only paying for the resurfacing, we're not really getting a good bang for our buck, because a lot of these streets don't have good stormwater management. So when we do put down, as we have in the past, we just pave over another layer after layer after layer. If you're not taking care of the water, you're not really getting a good return on investment for your road. So it does make some sense in the more populated, congested areas for us to take a more proactive approach on stormwater management as well. And curbs and catch basins are a big part of that.
And then just from my perspective with complete streets, upping the ante and making them actually ADA accessible with the pitched use of the 50+ unit senior living facility that will be coming to Glenfield. We really wanted to make sure that the new residents could get from point A to point B to the commercial areas along this sector. Complete streets, this inclusive streets. You think of crosswalks, you think of sidewalks, again, safety for all pedestrians, bicyclists, walkers, runners. We want our streets to be used by everybody, not just a select few on who can, walk. Or, we want wheelchairs, that elderly population, we want them to be able to easily commute from point A to point B along this main corridor. And building on what Ryan was saying about doing it right, instead of simply resurfacing, we want to get the drainage in there. As you can see, there's quite a bit of damage done to the road. And a lot of that is because we just keep sprawling that asphalt out to deal with the quote unquote drainage. And it's just making the issue even worse. And then shorter, you get a shorter lifespan out of that asphalt versus if you're doing it right with the curbs where you're directing that stormwater runoff into a catch basin. So there's more reasons other than the multimodal benefits here, as well as the aesthetics. Again, with the reuse of that Glenfield Elementary site, we definitely want to bring more residents to the hamlet, but it really will add to the aesthetics of the hamlet. Here are some examples that Tim included about providing pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure. If you've been through the hamlet of Glenfield, you may or may not notice sidewalks. And they were at one point on both sides of the street, which is even more mind blowing because you cannot see the sidewalks on one side of the street. So I know that it'll obviously improve the public space. And again, the drainage is a huge component of this project as well. And here's just another plug. I think he thought that maybe I wasn't going to be here today, so he wanted to give me a plug for the reasoning behind Complete Streets. And we are building, all streets, sidewalks, right-of-ways, waterways, parks, and other publicly accessible open spaces and public and civil buildings and facilities. This just gives you an idea of what you're looking at, looking down a road, and what it should be designed as. And then if only I could go back to show you what Glenfield is currently. So it'll be a vast improvement. And that is everything. I've provided the public informational session flyer that CNS has distributed. If you drive through the hamlet of Glenfield, you will also see yard signs letting the community members know that they are welcome to attend and ask questions. And at the February 28th meeting next week. And then I have been creating these fact sheets so that, when we have projects, it's a really quick one-page summary of what's happening for these projects. So like Ryan said, we hope to implement the Complete Streets principles and policies that the legislators have adopted over the past year when implementing any county project on any county right-of-way. And we hope that the towns and villages do too, by giving them some of these tools and leading the way on this. So any questions?
Why is that not?
It is for resurfacing, not for sidewalks. I think the thought was that most of the pedestrian usage, actually, it was set at first to be ended at Oliver Street. But then we had wanted to extend it to the last business on that street. I'm not sure why the engineer, it was not identified to go up to the field.
That section from the Bad Apple to the new bridge that we built, 5 years ago there on Blue Street, that has had really bad flooding. So part of this project is elevating that area. So I doubt the expense of sidewalks and curbs for that area I bet it would get pretty expensive because we're elevating the road as it is. Yeah.
Then also too, in Lowville, when we have sidewalks, we have, they have laws in place to, it's supposed to be shoveled and whatnot.
Mhm.
How will that be addressed in the spots where there are sidewalks?
I'm not sure if Tim has had follow-up conversations with the town of Martinsburg. I know that on this particular topic, but I know that when I've spoke with the town of Martinsburg, it was discussed that the town would likely take care of it, but through maybe individual contracts with somebody who lives on the stretch that would be willing to plow it. I know that New Bremen does that, has contracts with owners along the way to, instead of sending a municipal employee out there to.
The county would not be liable then for it.
No, nope. That was, in my discussions, that was a town of Martinsburg action. And then the poles, the utility poles, from what I know, will be moved, and it's a requirement. We don't have to pay for this part, but the utility poles will be moved to that 5-foot snow area in between the sidewalk and the curb. So if you see utility poles being moved, that's what that is for. And then the plan now is to retain the lighting on those utility poles. And after I had a conversation with the engineers before I came here, and the traffic will be pass-through traffic, limited to pass-through traffic during the months of construction. So any business, if you need to get to the businesses in the hamlet of Glenfield, and then if you obviously live in the hamlet of Glenfield, they'll be redirecting and but trying to limit it to pass-through traffic.
Is this scheduled for this year or next year?
Yes,
So
May.
they have to move all the power poles and everything?
Not that's not what's going to start in May. That'll be part of the Complete Streets curbing portion of that. So I would I would think that that would be more towards summer, midsummer months that would happen. But that's something that CNS is working with National Grid on.
Thank you.
The total project budget, we didn't mention that, but it was adopted in the capital budget this year is $4.6 million. We're hoping it will be less. $4 million will be from our CHIPS funding, so that's state funding, $600,000 from our own budget. Hopefully the bids will come in less.
And hopefully I can get some grant funding, but we won't know that for another few months. Anything else? I apologize. I'm here instead of Tim. He
Is
probably
there
has
any
better answers.
infrastructure underneath the roadway now? Like water lines, sewer lines?
There is, so town of Martinsburg, they completed a water project, I'd say 3 to 5 years ago, complete. So the water line is new along with services. And working with Tim, I met with him 2 years ago out there. The county had a contractor come up and TV and camera the lines and also all the drainage structures, and what we thought was there actually doubled in size on the stormwater and catch basins that were buried and not functioning, which in turn, in upstate New York, you have freeze thaw, and when you can't drain water, you have ponding water, which in turn goes down into the roadway, which in turn makes the asphalt ravel. So in doing so, doing our homework 2 years ago led us to where we are today, understanding what's there for infrastructure. The new water main is brand new, so we'll be replacing stormwater pipes, catch basins, reprofiling the roadway for new elevation, in turn directs the water to the curb lines, and will discharge the water to the appropriate outlet. So it'll be a nice project, and it'll be good for the community with businesses forthcoming. And you have the post office there. Maybe there used to be a restaurant there years ago. Maybe more businesses will come to the area, and it'd be a nice little hamlet as it used to be.
And Keystone Lumber is there as well.
But Jeff, we're, moving forward, that is an incredibly important consideration, the age of the infrastructure below the streets that we choose to address. Because if we go in and do a nice project and then the village needs to replace the water lines underneath, it makes no sense. So determining, after this summer, determining if this is something we want to continue to do to take this level of responsibility, we would go next to a place that would have newer infrastructure. So we've got our eye on Turin because they just got the grant to replace their water lines. Seville badly needs some work there, but their water lines are over 100 years old. So we don't want to go there until their lines are replaced.
But we're stepping in to try to
Right. We're
push
helping them
funding
too.
their way
Mhm.
so that we can do the water and the roadway infrastructure simultaneously. Yep.
Right.
Yep. So we've had to do some shuffling because we do have, Tim and I had improvement plans, like a 5-year kind of draft plan in our head. And we've had to shuffle those around the villages and hamlets and towns impacted because water projects, we certainly don't want to be incorporating a roadway resurfacing and complete streets project. And then a year later, they get the funding they need, so we're trying to coordinate to plan those as best we can. Mhm. Anything else? All right.
Thank you, Cassandra and Ryan. And now we'll move on to the number 3 road building history and future. Patricia Freilich, please. And Matt O'Connor.
Most everybody knows it as Mountain View. I'll let you take over the first slide, I guess.
All right. So kind of how we got here. So in the end of the year, which was after the budget season, there was a series of events that expedited the county taking responsibility for the building and land on number 3 road. And the most pressing one was Mountain View choosing not to provide services. And that was a condition of the grant lease that was implemented in 2003 and the grant lien, which was implemented in 2009. The other things that also impacted the events happened to do with the privatization of substance abuse services from the county to Credo Community Center, I believe in 2004. And there was another, I don't want to say incident, but there was another thing that happened in 2009, which added this ground lien document. So there's a lot of moving parts with here. So essentially in 2003, Mountain View approached the county and Oasis to find funding for a building that would be built on the number 3 road on the property. In 2003, the land was leased to Mountain View, so that condition would happen. Again, 2004, the county stopped doing substance abuse services. 2009 was the 20-year grant lien. And why those things are important is the first 2 events essentially said that the building will be used for 20 years for the provision of substance abuse services. So when they did the additional document in 2009, it added 5 years to the obligation to provide services from substance abuse treatment to the community. That kind of 2 things happened. So 20 years later, the ground lease has been completed. However, because of this document in 2009, the obligation that it houses services that provide substance abuse remain until 2029. So anyway, how did we get here? Essentially, at the end of 2023, Mountain View chooses to no longer provide the services. That enacted a clause in the grant lien, and essentially Office of Substance Abuse Addictions and Supports gets to say who lives in that building until the end of the grant lien. At the end of the year, Mountain View leaves, and then suddenly we are aware, or we need to be responsible for a whole bunch of things of which Matt will talk about. I just want to make sure that everybody awares that this happened rather quickly. I wanted to say that it was great with Ryan, Joan, Matt, Eric, Cassandra, all rallied together. How can we address this and ensure that the property is taken care of and we assume our responsibilities? Do you want to ask questions now, or do you want to hear what Matt has to say? Because that was quite a tale of whoa. All right.
So Pat talked about, 2003 was built. It's a wood frame, single story building. It's 6,700 square feet. It's split into 2 sections. They have Credo as one side, Mountain View was on the other. So there's the empty spaces on one side. Obviously when Mountain View left, they left a lot of, basically just closed their door and walked out. There was paperwork, which Pat has gone through, and Anna. There is copiers, computers, desks, chairs, everything. They literally just walked out the door. So that will all need to be taken care of, and I'm sure that Pat will be working on that through the next several months. The building itself really is in pretty decent shape. It has roof was put on it a few years ago. And my understanding is that there is still some issues with the valleys, but I'm trying to investigate those. So we do have staff in the building on a daily basis cleaning for Credo. It's a little difficult because of HIPAA, different criteria they require for basically eyes on. snow removal contract was taken care of by Jordan Arthur. He was contracted prior to that. And we just continued his contract for this coming year. So,
Yep, here you go.
the next.
Last minute changes.
The next few months, we'll be taking, kind of a survey of the building to see what it needs. First of all, the boiler, I would really like to upgrade that this summer because it went down on me twice over the weekend. So when it was so cold, that's not a good thing. And which goes to the fact that we're looking at putting our computer controls into the system. So it will notify us when that happens. And that'll be a big plus for us without knowing we wait on someone who shows up at the building to tell us that there's an issue. And so, so that'll be a big plus, and that'll be in here in the future budget that you'll see in a second. HVAC system will need some upgrading. For the most part, it's going to stay strong. One of my biggest concerns, though, is the north side of the building, on the uphill side, if you will. The site drainage is very limited. The water doesn't drain away from the building. There's pockets of water just lay against the foundation. There's water that lays on the lawn. They can't, after heavy rains, it takes them a couple of weeks to mow the lawn after that, after that stuff happens. So it needs to be addressed to get the water draining away from the building to preserve that building. It's a slab on grade. It doesn't have a full foundation, but it's a slab on grade, but the water needs to be, with freeze thaw cycles, it can be very destructive. So, depending on what department goes in there and when, there'll be need to be some interior changes, along with possibly some additional parking lot requirements too, because if one department goes in there, that's 17 people, which is 17 vehicles, and there's only probably about 25 spots there now. So there'll have to be some considerations taken to whatever department ends up in that building. But Coach and I have talked. We were going to walk through it. Want to just up one more? So we're going to walk through the building and look at get a report done here in the next probably a couple of months once it dries out a little bit. But as you can see, the building is the center on the bottom in the center. That's the front entryway, and you can see the two wings left and right. And there's a common space with bathrooms, conference room, a little break room, and some office space back on the uphill side. So,
Budget?
yeah. So we kind of had to throw this together pretty quickly as this really came upon us without much notice. So our current budget for basically the year, and this is all estimated because I have very little to go off of, but we're looking at $65,000 to do this for the year. And as you can see on the other sides, Pat, you can probably talk about that.
Sure. So to make sure that it really didn't create too much of a burden on the county, we calculated what we can expect from the tenants to cover the cost of the utilities and rent. And then I have some unrestricted funds in my account that will be able to pay the balance of that. So this will give us an idea before the next budget season, obviously, is to have a better sense of what the actual cost to be able to maintain this building going forward.
Yeah, we'll be able to track our numbers this year and, hopefully have something better to be better recommendations for our budget fund in coming years. So, but as you can see, it's the HVAC controls down on the bottom left, $19,000. That will go to adding those computer controls that tie into our existing system here at the courthouse. And that will allow us to manipulate and view temperatures or have alarms put out if there's something going on. And that'll be very beneficial in the future. So, and we'll also have a service contract with Train. They will have and So they'll be there doing PM, several times a year.
Is it-
I guess that's about it for us. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, I have one. You said that, you're required to keep an organization in there that is, Oasis approved. Who is it going to be when Credo moves out?
So that is a factor that likely will happen after the first year because of other circumstances. So in my perfect world, at this point in time, I don't see another substance abuse treatment provider needing to come into the county because we've already got one. So that being said, is this an opportunity for the building to get approval from Oasis saying that, oh, by the way, our substance abuse people are housed elsewhere. They're providing the services that are required. I don't expect that. Is that an opportunity for me to negotiate maybe a quicker utilization of the building for the county? I can't promise that, but that's really kind of where I'm hoping this goes.
Okay, but who, do you have somebody in mind then?
So for substance abuse, no, but for prevention, yes, I do.
Okay,
So the prevention services, we are in discussions with Pivot, which is the Prevention Council of Jefferson County. They've been a well-known provider for as long as I can remember. And they will be requiring to use that half of the building. And that's just me, like the difference and nuances between the services.
In the long run, what we could use the building for, once it's released from Oasis, is I think it would make a nice home for public health. It's about the right size. Right now, public health is in the hospital, but they're split, between 3 different locations. So, that's probably not going to happen overnight, but I think that could be a great long-term home for them.
Just got a question. If Mountain View moved out that fast, what happened to their patient records?
So the
Because I
patient
have-
records, my understanding, have been assumed by the county.
Doesn't that put us at a liability for those?
I can't speak to that because I wasn't involved in that transaction. The recommendations at the time of them moving was that the records be stored in a facility that does this and understands the regulations about that. However, the Mountain View Board chose not to do that.
So which happened, they contacted the county clerk, which they provided they went to his criteria for file storage. And we've stored probably a dozen boxes or so up at Record Storage Building. So they're locked away in a secure area for the time being.
We had the county clerk take them, Barry, and secure them. I notified the state of where they are and the circumstances, so they told us that was the best thing to do at the current time.
Any other questions? Ryan asked me to, as long as I was up here, to make the committee aware of a expectation from the Office of Mental Health. So the past several years, the Office of Mental Health has been very determined to ensure that every county in New York State has access to mobile crisis services. So in the most recent initiative, they have actually provided any county that doesn't have that currently established with some one-time startup funding. And this would essentially help support the development of a program that we currently do not offer in the county. So again, to just make you aware, planting the seeds, is that the county would be expected to provide those services or contract them out like we do for the mental health services or substance abuse services. They've given us the option to do this being a one county program or to partner with other counties to serve a region. Let's see, and obviously any services are going to be based on what our needs are and to use the available resources that we have currently in place, as well as to partner with the other crisis related things that are going on. And given the scope of the process and the fact that in addition to providing the services, it's going to be extremely important to partnership with other agencies such as law enforcement, EMS, the hospital system. Given Fort Drum Regional Health Planning Organization's experience and connections, they have agreed to be the project manager for that. And part of their responsibility will be is to, once the services have been developed, implemented, how is it going to be sustained in the future? Providing crisis services is extremely challenging, and it's certainly an option that is certainly going to benefit our residents. But we have to be smart about it and ensure that we're responsible not only to put in realistic services, but look at the long-term sustainability of that. So,
So this doesn't necessarily apply to the General Services Committee, but since Pat was already up here and had her PowerPoint together, I knew there would be we knew there would be questions in the Human Services Committee. So there's a resolution in that packet that applies to this.
Yes. Yeah. Any questions? There's more to come. More to come. Right. Well, thank you.
Thank you, Pat and Matt.
They're not going into that.
I believe we're ready to move on to resolutions.
Okay. The first one is authorizing an agreement between Lewis County District Attorney's Office and Nicholas DiMartino of Syracuse, New York, for the purpose of providing criminal prosecution services for cases in Oswego County. Due to the conflicts of interest, the court has determined to require an order to appoint a special district attorney for the period of March 1st, 2024 through December 31st, 2024 at a cost not to exceed $158 an hour.
Any discussion? All in favor? Any nays? Carried.
The next one is authorizing an agreement with Credo to occupy a portion of the county's building located at 7714 Number 3 Road, Lowell, New York, through December 2024 or upon Credo relocating, whichever occurs first. The terms of the agreement shall include Credo paying the county $2,500 per month, retroactive to January 1st, 2024, for Credo's proportional share of the maintenance and operational costs of the building and property. The budget appropriations for this building and property will come from a community services reserve account and the expected shared operational costs from Credo.
Any discussion? All in favor? Any nays? Carried.
The next one is awarding bid and authorizing contract to Hill High Excavation from Clayton, New York for the Singing Waters Park water system at a cost not to exceed $55,390.
Any discussion? All in favor? Any nays? Carried. Jeff, did you have something you wanted to say? I'm going to refer to Ryan.
Yes, we have been in the process of getting water to the new bathhouse for a year at this point. We are at the mercy of the Department of Health, who has designed a specific water system that we must implement. So we did have a well that we had dug before that was unable to get the amount of water that we needed per the Department of Health requirements. So we dug a new well at the, towards the end of last year. And now we have to implement the exact water treatment and delivery system to the bathhouse. Larry, is that pretty much? Yep. We never thought that this water situation was going to be as expensive as it has, but the state has their requirements and we have to meet them. So,
Well, you may recall we drilled one well, and by the time we got to hook it up,
was dry. So then we had to move the well and drill a new well, and it's been a challenge.
The next one is authorizing no significant environmental impact on the addition of approximately 3.5 miles of off-highway vehicle trails to the Lewis County OHV trail system.
Any discussion? All in favor? Any nays? Carried.
Adding approximately 3.5 miles of off-highway vehicle OHV trail to the Lewis County OHV trail system.
Any discussion? All in favor? Any nays?
Awarding bid and authorizing contract to Dan's Hauling and Demo from Wynenskill, New York, for the demolition and removal of a condemned structure in the village of Port Lyden at a cost not to exceed $27,000.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Who
Any
owns the
nays? I'm sorry.
Who owns the land?
The corporation owns it. We have the information on the owner who's had some other properties and some other businesses that he's operated. But he's been unresponsive to fixing the building. Yeah, it's gonna go on his taxes.
Carried. I don't know where I am.
Amending compensation plan with reference to the district attorney's office to abolish a full-time office specialist position and create a full-time paralegal position at an hourly rate of $21.46 up to $24.15, retroactive to February 26, 2024.
Any discussion? All in favor? Any nays? Okay, we have one motion. I move to award bids for sand, gravel, crushed stone, and concrete based on project location in accordance with the tabulation of all bids prepared by the highway superintendent and placed on file with the clerk of the board for the period of April 1st, 2024 through March 31st, 2025. And do I have a second? Thank you.
Point of order, we have to call for the vote on the motion.
Okay, all in favor of the motion?
Talking about on the sand and gravel motion. Andrew, you need everybody to vote on it now. You had a second, you need somebody.
I'm sorry, okay. So all in favor? Any nays? So are we adjourned?
Nope, that motion carries, and now if you want to ask for adjournment.
Could I have a motion to adjourn, please? Thank you. On a second? Thanks.
I call the Human Services Committee meeting to order. I just want to remind everyone to make sure you turn on your microphones before you speak. And that I'm going to move the January 16th, 2024 meeting minutes, which were distributed to committee meetings or committee members, are approved as recorded. Can I get a second? Okay. Any discussion?
A second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, the motion carries. So we have 3 different presentations today. The first one will be the Bridges Out of Poverty. We have a few people here to discuss that. Stephanie Hauser-Fraus from Public Health Specialist, Heidi Lehman from Grand Slam Safety Human Resources Director, and Montana Hoppel, which is the Bridges Out of Poverty graduate. Can I come up?
Well, thank you all. It's an honor to be
Hey,
presenting
Cassandra.
to you.
I'm sorry, guys. Did we send this to Connor, the presentation? Yeah. Should be.
Well, as he brings it up, we will go ahead and get started so we don't take more of your time. So we're going to share a little bit about the Bridges Out of Poverty initiative. And the mission for Bridges Lewis County is empowering individuals to build resources for success in a community where everyone can live well. So we recognize that poverty can cause trauma, it can cause adverse health outcomes, and limited opportunities, including in employment and education. And we see this as something that affects individuals, but also something that can affect our community as a whole. Bridges Out of Poverty Lewis County includes a couple different facets. One is the Bridges Out of Poverty trainings, which we do twice a year, usually. And those help professionals and community members understand economic environments and hidden rules in those economic environments. We also have Getting Ahead in a Just Getting By World, which Montana is going to explain a lot more about. And that is a 20-week session where investigators, we don't say participants or students, but investigators take a look at their own resources and gain and build resources for themselves and their community. And then after folks graduate from Getting Ahead, we have a monthly Staying Ahead gathering, which continues to help build resources and just create a sense of community there. We are governed by a steering committee, which is a multi-sector group of people. It was originally appointed by the Priorities Council. So you can see in those slides, there are some pictures of those different things. Excuse me. All right, so one of the things that people always want to know about is some of the numbers, some of the things that affect us here in Lewis County. So this is census data for the most part. I don't know if you recall from high school, mean and median. So up there, I have the median household incomes, both nationally and in Lewis County. So sometimes we get confused and think that means the average, but actually median is the dead center, 50% below, 50% above. So you can see that our median income here in Lewis County is a bit lower than the national average. And then if you take a look at the average household income, that's even lower than the median income. And actually, if you were to be making that average household income in a family of 4, that would place you just below the federal poverty guidelines. And about 12% of folks here in Lewis County are experiencing poverty. And of course, that can be higher for children. Average household income, just a little piece about this statistic, is that that's not a census data point. Like we can look at that in Lewis County, but there's not a national data point on the census. And that could be because the poorer we are, the more likely we are to measure our means by income. And the richer we are, the more likely we are to measure our means by net worth. So it can be a kind of a hard data point to find. And that being said, poverty is relative to our communities and to kind of what we've experienced. Many of us in Lewis County have either experienced poverty ourselves, or we're really only 1 or 2 generations away from having experienced that. And our neighborhoods are very, mixed as far as income levels and that sort of thing as well. In Bridges, when we talk about poverty, we are talking about it in a generational way. So we're talking about folks who are experiencing poverty themselves, and their parents and their grandparents have also experienced poverty. And so when we talk about middle class or wealth, we're also talking about that in a generational way. But that being said, when a person is hungry, it really doesn't matter whether the poverty is generational or it's just sort of a situational thing that they've found themselves in. I don't know why this is skipping 2 slides at once. Okay. So getting ahead in a just getting by world is one of our signature pieces, and it is a signature piece of Bridges' work around the country. I won't go into too much detail because Montana will be sharing a lot about that, but it is a 20-week curriculum-driven session. And like I said, folks investigate their own situations as well as the community. It's a kitchen table experience. So it's not where there's, a leader talking and sharing insight so much as it is a group of people kind of discovering things together. And we do use a curriculum, of course. We eat together, so that helps us create relationships and sort of breaks down some of those social barriers. Also, it can help eliminate barriers, just like in school with the school lunch program. We know that folks can learn better if their physical needs are met. Other ways that we eliminate barriers are compensating people for their time with gift cards, providing transportation, and providing vouchers for childcare if people need that. And many of the concepts that folks learn in the Bridges Out of Poverty trainings for agency staff and so on, these are the same concepts that are learned in Getting Ahead, just in a little bit of a different way sometimes. And several of our Getting Ahead graduates have taken the training to become facilitators themselves, and we're sort of mentoring them into that. That is a big goal of ours. Since 2020, we started our first session in March of 2020. We have had 7 cohorts, and we have more than 30 Getting Ahead graduates. We will in a month be starting our 8th cohort, so we're recruiting for that right now. And then here's our monthly gathering of Getting Ahead graduates. It's called Staying Ahead, and it's a way of mentoring folks, because one of the things that we believe at Bridges is that we need to have folks who have experienced poverty at decision-making tables. But it's hard to just toss people into that, and so this can provide a mentoring space for that as well. So now we're going to have Montana share with us her perspective on Getting Ahead. So you can see some of the pictures, and the trophies in the background don't have anything to do with Getting Ahead, but we had the graduation at the New Bremen Fire Hall, which was a great location. They were very welcoming. And that was just in early January. So Montana is a very recent graduate.
Okay. Up until the end of 2023, I felt defeated. I had achieved my main goals, like buying a vehicle and finding my own place. I found myself working 70+ hours trying to make ends meet, although ends are never really met when you're already behind. For a while, I was comforted by drinks and a bar stool beside many people doing just what I was doing, numbing the troubles until the next day, until it became an almost everyday situation. I owed mechanics, rent was behind, and I was in a rapidly failing relationship that exhausted me of motivation for just about anything. I lost both of my jobs and found myself depressed and stuck. I remembered someone speaking highly of Grand Slam safety, so I applied. Only a few days later, I had an interview. Shortly after, I received a welcome to the team card. This had upset that one person that I wanted to be happy for me, but I'm so glad that I pursued it anyways. HR Heidi Lehman saw something in me that many don't. She took me under her wing and made her unconditional support known and got me a seat in Getting Ahead. I was so nervous though. What if I failed this class? And I had no idea the education that I was about to receive. First, we defined poverty, learning that our relationships were our driving force. Quickly, I related to my own life, pouring into people that didn't care, that I was pouring from an almost empty cup, turned into finding myself mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. Sitting at the bar was replaced with quality time with my dad, once a struggling single father, full custody of 2 children under 10, now owner of Hops Builders, chief of the New Bremen Fire Department, and on the sheriff's dive team. We weren't just here to understand poverty, though. We acknowledged how the middle class and wealthy survive too, learning the benefits of planning backwards and how to build our resources. We also discovered the hidden rules of each class, giving us the blueprints to success. Now, even though my classmates and I may not be wealthy, we could still have well-grounded, educated conversations with people who are. Stephanie and Karen gave my dad's favorite quote while growing up, "You are who you hang out with," meaning. I was taught to make relationships with people who have like-minded goals, such as financial and emotional stability, social capital, motivation, healthy relationships and role models, and a place where your faith isn't belittled. I really can't express how much this class helped me, not only with understanding my situation, but with building a support system. Sometimes all a person needs is someone to believe in them. For me, Heidi is that person, but she didn't stop there. She put me through a class that teaches you to believe in yourself. Since graduation, I've been more motivated at work, put on an SOP committee, and receiving great employee reviews. I released myself from draining relationships and friendships. I also decided it was time to do something for my community and applied to be a member volunteer firefighter. Classes start in 2 weeks. Past debts are still not totally caught up, but after this class, I have confidence in myself. I don't feel like I'm drowning anymore, and I will get ahead. Thank you.
So Montana applied for one of the hardest positions at our organization. And when I asked her in the interview, why would you want to do this position? Her response back to me was so inspiring. Her words were, "I need better friends." And I knew immediately that she was a wonderful candidate for the Getting Ahead program. She wanted to get into a better situation and just needed an opportunity presented in front of her. We hire on 3 things at Grand Slam Safety: humble, hungry, and smart. And Montana had hungry right from the beginning. I could tell it in the first interview. When she came back for the second interview, I was looking to see if she had humility or smart. She had both. So we immediately knew that she was a fit for our organization, and we made it contingent on her going through this process, this class, and graduating. And she has just absolutely exceeded all of our expectations, and I'm so proud of her.
So this conversation between Heidi and Montana is kind of what Bridges and Getting Ahead are all about. It takes a community and it takes multi-sector. So from an employment perspective, Heidi has shared that to have something outside of the workplace itself to build up employees who are coming in maybe at an entry-level position has been an asset that her organization can use. And then for us at Bridges, or for me at Public Health, it's an asset to have folks in our business and manufacturing community to say, we want to build up our workforce and we can see that this is a win-win for us. So that's kind of why we hoped to share their stories today. Just a few more words, and then if you have any questions for us. You might wonder how to get involved with Bridges Out of Poverty, Lewis County. So the first thing I would recommend or suggest to all of you is that we are doing a Bridges Out of Poverty training March 6th. It's a Wednesday. It will be at DSS. Jenny and Lisa Hetzner are helping to sponsor us there. And then after taking a Bridges training, you can join a learning collaborative. So often those of us in the human service world, we take some great training and we come back and we think we're going to use it, and then it just kind of fades away into the busyness of our lives. But the steering committee for Bridges Out of Poverty, and this is really headed up by Megan Harney at the Laval Free Library, didn't want to see that happen. And so every quarter we have 2 separate sessions, but they're identical, to talk more about Bridges concepts. So in Getting Ahead, every time they do a community assessment. So there's 9 sectors that they look at in the community. And we have guests come in and speak to us about those sectors, and they rank them. Housing always ranks lowest on our community assessment. And so at the last Learning Collaborative, which was this month in February, we had folks who do housing in their everyday world come and talk to us and kind of look at housing through a Bridges lens, so that we're continuing to build those multi-sector relationships and look out for building the whole community. The next thing that you could do to get involved with Bridges is exactly what Heidi did, make a referral to Getting Ahead. Maybe you have folks who are in your neighborhood, maybe you have folks in your workplace who have come from generational poverty, and you see that hunger and that desire to build resources. We're recruiting for Getting Ahead right now, actually. The other thing is, if you are in a situation where you have a board or you have other programs or other committees that sort of govern your work, invite Getting Ahead graduates to provide input or even to be on those committees. Also, we are a coalition model, so our steering committee is made up of folks from lots of different agencies and businesses in the community, but we do not have our own funding stream, so that's always a possibility too, to help with funding. And it didn't fit on the slide, but each time we have a Getting Ahead graduation, all of you all as legislators, all the department heads and others are always invited to those graduations. They're very inspiring events, as they can attest. So come to that. And we also invite other elected officials. The one picture that had Montana receiving her diploma, that was a representative from Senator Walczyk's office. So they come each time, and Senator Blankenbush's office as well. And then Representative Stefanik always sends certificates as well. So it is something that, we invite you to be a part of with us. That is, oh, and here's a shameless plug again for the Bridges Out of Poverty training. You can talk to me afterwards if you want to register, or there's all the contact information there. We'd love to have you there. And today I get to be the person sort of from the Bridges Steering Committee talking to you, but it is a multi-sector group. NERCL has been very involved from the beginning when the Priorities Council initiated Bridges Out of Poverty, and they are our fiduciary, so that's helpful too. And then Karen Carr from South Lewis Central School is also integral to the work that we're doing right now, along with many of the county agencies that are here today. So this is contact information. You can follow us on Facebook. And we'd love to answer questions if you have any.
I would say well done.
Does anyone have any questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Okay, so our second presentation today will be by Eric Verkler. He's going to update us and provide us with some IGT facts.
We talked at, I think, the board meeting a few weeks ago about our intergovernmental transfer and a recent payment. So I thought it would be time to give you a little bit more of an update and background on that. And we kind of went through the same information a year ago. So it's going to be a repeat for some of you. So working off of this page of paper, and you don't have to follow it all today, but you can take it home and continue to look at it. The IGT, as we call it in short term, stands for Intergovernmental Transfer. It's a funding mechanism where federal Medicaid funds flow down through New York State and then to public nursing homes and hospitals. For us in Lewis County, the Lewis County Health System receives payments for both, for their skilled nursing facility and for the hospital. Jeff is here, and Jeff, if you have any technicalities to chime in on, please do, because I'm not really an expert on the why, but it's funding for facilities in lieu of care that they provide for uninsured or charity when they're not getting paid by their patients. Uncompensated Medicaid payments. Thank you, Jeff. And those pieces of funding for the skilled nursing facility and for the hospital come at different times. The guidelines on that and process from the federal and state standpoint are not always, I don't think they're set in stone, and we get the funds when the governments are ready to release them. So generally with a skilled nursing facility, we get 2 payments during the year in January, February, and December. And for the hospital, it's typically 1 payment, but then they also have retroactive times when they reconcile and clean up their prior calculations. The interesting component of this is that for the health facility to get their funds, their municipal entity has to sponsor or contribute. So simple terms, for the hospital to receive or the nursing home to receive $1 million, the municipality has to contribute $500,000. And that must be in the legislation somewhere. I've never researched that, but that's just the way it works. So it creates kind of a different situation for both our entities. For us, it's an expense that we have to pay out and try and budget and estimate. On the hospital nursing home side, it's a revenue that, again, they have to estimate and try and build into their budget. As noted, the timing of the funding is not always defined, and the amounts of the funding are very undefined, calculated in challenging calculations. And again, thus we don't always know what those amounts will be, and it's very difficult to build them into our budgets. The numbers you see on the page, I'm not going to go through those in much detail at all. The section in the middle is based on the state fiscal year, and it goes back to 2010. That can be a little confusing, again, because it's not on our calendar year. The bottom section is based on our calendar and county budget year, so we'll focus on that. But as you can see, if you do look back up at the middle section, there's highs and lows in when that funding. I mean, anywhere from the county paying out $7 million a year down to years where we paid out nothing. Just that shows you a picture of the time frame and how it makes it a little bit difficult to plan for these dollars. Then on the very bottom of the page, what I've shown you is that funding and compared to our budget. And again, we budget with the best estimate we can. I think in the last couple of years, Ryan and I have taken the philosophy that we're going to try to under budget. We don't want to budget $5 million and we really don't know if we'll have to pay that out, and that $5 million then becomes a burden on the taxpayer, and it makes an uneven transition from one year to the next, where the next year we might not have to pay out anything, and again that affects our budget. So we've taken the philosophy to try and be conservative on our budget, and what you can see in that the columns in the bottom is that over a period of time, it reconciles itself. Over just the last 4 years, we are a little over $100,000 under budget in what we've projected for the IGT. And I don't have the math there, but going back to 2017, I think you'll see the same thing. So just highlights for this year, as you can see, we have a budget of $2.4 million. As I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, we just had a payment we had to make of $3,498,000. That was unexpected, both in timing and amount. We do expect that there will be additional funding needed from the county over the rest of 2024. We have still not paid out the skilled nursing facility payments that I mentioned are typically in January, February, or December. Those have not yet come through, so we would expect that we will pay those out sometime in the not too distant future. So we will definitely be over budget for this line for 2024. And that is something, again, later in the year, we probably will look at that and make an appropriation to cover that, that situation. Again, I mentioned this earlier, but on the hospital side, the skilled nursing facility side, that's a good thing. They get more revenue in their system, and it provides them much needed funding for their operations. Questions? You look at that some more and you do have anything else you think about, please don't hesitate to give me a call. Talk you through it as best I can, and we can always rely on Jeff as a resource also. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Okay, our third presentation is going to be a discussion on the Montague Tower discussion, and the county attorney, Joan, will give us some information on that.
Yeah, so some of the legislators may not know, but we entered into a contract with AT&T a number of years ago to lease space on the Montague Tower. We've now been approached by Verizon, who they're also interested in getting on the tower. We will go through the same process of entering into a preliminary agreement with Verizon to look at the tower, to pay us a certain amount of money in that first year when they want to look at it and determine whether or not it's feasible for them to be on the tower. Any costs associated with any strengthening of the tower, locations of where they want to be, we will not let them up on the highest level of the tower. We always reserve that for 911. It's pretty, I believe, because we had to do some strengthening when AT&T went on there, that will happen again this time. Part of our initial agreement with Verizon, just to look at the tower and see if it's feasible, is for them to pay any of the expert costs that we have for somebody to review the structural studies that will be involved in looking at the tower and the strength. So we just wanted to bring that to the board's attention. Currently, we are paid we contract with AT&T for $2,200 a month as a lease payment. It's on a lease that is on somebody else's property. So part of our original lease agreement with the landowner is that any leases, any revenue that is brought in by the county on the tower is shared with the landowner. So that same thing would apply here. We're really just in the preliminary stages of this, so I would imagine over the course of the next 3 or 4 months, we'll be looking at some structural analysis, some technical information from Verizon as to where they want to be, whether or not we can fit it in there, and then we'll have some more discussion with the board if they want to move forward. Any questions?
Thank you, Joan.
Okay.
So now we will move on to the draft resolutions. Cassandra?
Thank you. Appointing Karen Bolivar of Lowell, New York as a member of the Alcohol and Substance Abuse Subcommittee to fulfill an unexpired term that has been vacant since January 1st, 2024. The term of appointment shall be effective March 5th, 2024 through December 31st, 2027.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Anyone opposed? Carried.
The next one is authorizing agreement between Lewis County Community Services and Fort Drum Regional Health Plan Organization to act as project manager for developing a mobile crisis service in Lewis County at a cost of $150,000, which is 100% state funding, commencing January 15th, 2024 through December 31st, 2024, with an option to extend if needed.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Anyone opposed? Carried.
Accepting and appropriating the New York State Division of Criminal Justice Services Award of $60,000 to offset the costs associated with certified pretrial services provided by probation, and authorizing treasurer to deposit said funds into the appropriate budget lines when received.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Anyone opposed? Carried.
The next one is authorizing an agreement between Lewis County Public Health and Melanie Saber for the purpose of providing psychological services to qualifying children in the preschool education program commencing March 1st, 2024 through February 28th, 2025 under the pre-approved New York State ED rates.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Carried.
The last one is appropriating the 2023-2024 New York State Radio Grant Funds awarded in the amount of $665,538 into the E911 account lines for equipment repairs and professional services.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Carried. Okay, so now we review the motion. And I move to authorize out-of-state travel for Lewis County Public Health employees, Marsha Ashline and Anna Birchenough, to attend the Immunization Coalition National Conference in Philadelphia, PA, from April 8th through April 11th, 2024. Can I have a second? Okay. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carried. And no need for executive session. So if any, does anyone have any other business to bring in front of the committee? Okay, if not, I move to adjourn this meeting. Can I have a second? Okay, Tom? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. This meeting is now adjourned.
Finance and Rules Committee together. Start off with the approval of the January 16th, 2024 committee minutes. If there are no amendments, I'll take a motion to accept them. Jeff, seconded by Herb. All in favor, say aye. Approved. We have a couple presentations today. The first one is going to be from Cassie Buell, Planning and Community Development Director, about our broadband expansion update. Cassie.
Connor has my presentation. There we go. So we wanted to take this opportunity to update all of the legislators, especially the new legislators, on some of the broadband initiative projects that we've closed and are working towards. And I'll make this really quick because I know the meat and potatoes is after me. So for those of you who haven't been following our broadband initiative, we started this focus area of broadband towards the tail end of 2020, where we collaborated with DANC, the Development Authority of the North Country, to complete an inventory of the serviceable locations in the county and to do a survey for the public on who needs what, where, when. So obviously we found that our county was extremely underserved and unserved for the most part. So we worked very quickly. I mean, that survey was completed and the inventory was completed in April of 2021. Within a month, we had a grant application, and within 2 months, we had funding. So we moved pretty quickly with the plan and the data that we had. So some of the outcomes of that survey were that we had some, I don't know if you're familiar with the CDBG program. I feel like it's my life at this point, CDBG. But at that particular time, there was some coronavirus funding that was just released that we took advantage of. And I'll go further into details on the amount of funding that we received. We also received a Northern Border Regional Commission funded project, and we implemented a community development and inclusion project, digital equity project for Village and Hamlet free public Wi-Fi access points. We just recently, within the last few months, completed the Spectrum fiber build out. DANC worked with the New York Power Authority to complete a fiber project in the town of Diana. And now we're on to the next possible, or the next current project that we have is the MBRC Catalyst project that we worked with DANC last year to submit as a tri-county area. I'll get into details on that. That's a current project. And then the potential projects and future investment that I'd like to just cover as possible opportunities that we will be discussing with our broadband ad hoc committee in March are possible additional frontier communication, acceleration project, spectrum expansion areas, and the Connect All municipal infrastructure program project that I have in your resolution packets today. So quickly, there's Ryan. In January of 2023, so about this time last year, we had officially launched the CDBG project. We had completed that. That was a fixed wireless project, basically meaning that we worked with a WISP provider, Hudson Valley Wireless, to deploy wireless service to areas that were much harder to attain with fiber. So there are antennas on the Lewis County-owned tower in Lionsdale and the Lewis County-owned tower in Diana. And the reason that those areas were identified is because they were in LMI communities, which is a national objective criteria for CDBG program funds. So it's a big puzzle piece of funding in addition to all of the data that we have. And with that program came free installation and equipment to available ACP, which is Affordable Connectivity Program users, which that is an income-based qualification. And again, it was launched last year. And that's the coverage area map in the town of Lionsdale for that service. And this is the coverage map in the town of Diana for that Hudson Valley Wireless. Quickly moving over to the NBRC project status, we have finally closed that one out. That's great. That one was a pickle because of the wireless tower situation. We weren't able to work with one of our towers. It wasn't high enough. So we worked on securing space on the WPBS tower on County Route 194. And this also has free equipment available to the first 200 enrollees, and it went live officially in November. And we've had some really great feedback and user enrollment there on that one. There's also, as part of that project and the CDBG project, there's free public Wi-Fi access points included in the grant fund. So they were outside of the free public Wi-Fi. So this is the NBRC service coverage area for that particular project. And again, that is live now. So if you have any friends or family in that area, send them to Hudson Valley Wireless to enroll. This is the Village and Hamlet Free Public Wi-Fi Access Point project. This was the first of its kind. It's something that Spectrum is now using as a case study for other municipalities. We used ARPA funds to deploy a 3-year contract worth of free public Wi-Fi access points in villages and hamlets across the county. I will just note that the Village of Lavelle says that there's 2, but it's 2 huge districts, if you will. So there's 24 linked units. It's a very large area, but our intent was to promote community development and digital equity for those in our villages and hamlets in need of wireless. The Spectrum fiber build out, probably the project that I get the most phone calls and appreciation calls for. This is the fiber build out that Spectrum just completed at the end of last year that we identified as areas that were more difficult to hit with fixed wireless. And they were really last mile services. The contract that we entered into with Spectrum was for 366 passings in the towns of Croghan, Denmark, Gregg, Lavelle, and Watson. And in the end, they were able to add 20 more passings for a total of 386. And I'm sure if you know anybody on the East Road in Lavelle or on the Ridge Road, they are very happy campers right now. And on the Arthur Road, I may add. Okay. So yeah, there's a lot of I mean, we wish we could have deployed it much earlier, but it was one of the tough parts about fiber build out, especially aerial, is that we have to work with pole permitting. So we're at the demise of getting all those fund permits. So we hoped to have it done early in the year, but that was the quickest we could go with that Spectrum build out. But that is complete. For the NIPA project, again, this was a collaboration with the New York Power Authority and DANK. DANK built out dark fiber, which is basically it's open to, so say Spectrum doesn't want to use fiber that's open for public use or open to anybody else to use. They rather have a private fiber and they rather lay it themselves. This is dark fiber and DANK has worked with Slick Network Solutions to be the network provider for the fiber that they laid for 127 passings. And so far, it has already enrolled 77 users. So that's really great. I know DANK is very happy with the outcome of that, and that one is complete as well. And that's in the town of Diana. The NBRC Catalyst project, this is a current project that we're working on with the Development Authority of the North Country, very similar to the first NBRC bucket of funds that we received for the town of Denmark, Pinckney, Harrisburg area. They expect to have 178 passings for fiber in the towns of Denmark, Diana, Turin, and West Turin. And then fixed wireless will be located on Gomer Hill, which is, I believe, the tallest point in the county. And that is a county-owned tower. So hopefully that's just as easy as the Lionsdale and Diana deployment. And we expect to see, as the mapping visual shows, passings in Gregg, West Turin, Lionsdale, Leiden, Turin, Lewis, Watson, Osceola, Montague, Martinsburg, and Constableville. It really did. It made sense to deploy or to apply for the funding for a wireless project here just because of the area that we could hit, and the investment from Lewis County is a $250,000 grant match. And again, Dank is the administrator of that, so that makes my life a little bit easier. But they are working on the environmental right now and to lock in the specific addresses in I think the town of Diana is the one that we're going back and forth with on where to serve. Some opportunities that we'll be discussing at our next meeting. Frontier Communications, I know you're probably all aware of Frontier Communications, but they have received federal RDOF funding, and they received that around the time of COVID. And with that, they have up to 6 years to build out their fiber services, which is frustrating to us because that limits the amount of state and federal funding I can look at for those areas. So unless it's local funds, my hands are tied to do most anything in those locations that they've been awarded, which is pretty significant in Lewis County. But we've been working with Frontier Communications to identify some scenarios and project options to help progress this to move forward in an accelerated manner, where we could complete it in 12 months versus 6 years. So as you can see, that they have until the fall of 2028, and you can only imagine the technology changes that'll ensue between now and then. So they've presented us with 4 scenarios and project options based upon the unserved and underserved addresses that we provided them with from our data and the FCC data. And those locations were in the town of Watson and Croghan, town of Pinckney, town of Osceola, which was the biggest bang for your buck, and then the town of Gregg. So we will be analyzing those, and I'll be bringing additional information to the Broadband Ad Hoc Committee in March for that opportunity. The next opportunity is more spectrum fiber expansions where it makes sense. Again, this is fiber is always the most expensive option, but in most locations, due to our terrain and our topography, it is the only option because wireless, it struggles to go through the vegetation and the terrain that we have in Lewis County. We're lucky to have the terrain and vegetation we have, but it's not conducive to most solutions with fixed wireless. So we are working on obtaining some costs, just as we did with the 366 passings from the previous contract, to do some last mile expansion services in the town of Gregg, which I've put up some addresses that are some roads there that we've been looking at. And then in the town of Watson, which I believe some of those roads, Andrea and I have spoken on as high need locations. And the next opportunity is the New York State Connect All Municipal Infrastructure Program grant. We can apply for up to $30 million, although I do not foresee us applying for nearly that much. The only stipulation is that it has to be open access connectivity. So Spectrum is not a partner with this project. It would need to be a partnership with Dank, which they are happy to work with us. We're lucky that we have the relationship we do with them. So we are going to be collaborating. We've been meeting on a weekly basis to hash out some details on some expansions that make sense. Again, we can't, and we shouldn't duplicate efforts where RDOF funding is already received and where state funding is already received. So it's a giant puzzle, and we're working to get a phase 2 application in by April 19th. Ongoing broadband planning. We submitted FCC challenges last year, which basically if our data showed that a location was not served, but say Frontier Communications claims that they did serve them on their map, we can challenge that and say, you claim that you service this area, but you don't. And then they would be mandated to go out there and investigate. So we completed those. That was a hefty project, planning all in itself. And then we're continuing to work with Dank. Broadband planning funds available to our department for any of the work that I do. We get up to $20,000, so we've been reimbursed for that. And then the utilization, we're looking to utilize Dank's temporary employees to go back and verify all of the unserved addresses, locations, just so that we make sure that our mapping is as up to date as possible. And dark fiber expansions, like like I had explained with the partnership with DANK. And then obviously we're always looking for grant funding collaborations. So those are just a few things that we're working on with planning efforts. And then I really would like to advocate everybody to look at our broadband website. We keep everything up to date. There's an interactive map. There's information on all of the funding that we've received, that we're working on, and that we're exploring. So definitely, if you have any questions, that's a one-stop shop for broadband. And then obviously everybody's welcome to contact me, but yeah, any information, all information. Broadband headquarters here in Lewis County. Any questions?
No questions?
Oh, okay. Somebody's got to have a question about broadband. So we keep this very up to date. Any of the recent, if you scroll down, there's information on how to go to the Hudson Valley Wireless website. We've had really great feedback on Hudson Valley Wireless service, especially those from Wood Battle Road who have had nothing. That's coming back. That's good. The feedback has been really great. That it's very, very good service, and it's affordable, if not free, if you're an affordable connectivity program eligible client. All right.
Very good. Thank you very much, Kathy.
You're welcome.
Our next presentation is on the Lewis County Health Insurance Fund. Be with Ryan, the county manager, Eric Berkler, our treasurer, Susie Phillips, and Robert Broccoli of CKG.
We're all gonna cram up around this. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh.
So we tried that one time. Screen for it.
Who's sure enough? Yeah, because I'm not gonna speak to you unless you. Okay. I don't know. Susie's gonna help.
Hard to get a word in edgewise.
Yeah. Yeah, I need an extra copy of that too.
Where am I?
Right here.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. What I had just distributed is a report that we just received over the weekend. It is our health plan management report. So a lot of the data that we're going to talk about and refer to today is broken down 25 different ways in this report. So you guys are seeing more or less everything that we see when it comes to the health plan. So we have open enrollment coming up. As you know, Lewis County is self-insured, and April is our open enrollment period where people have the opportunity to change plans. But it also means that we have to lock in our rates because the plan year begins on June 1st. So we're going to talk about the current status of the plan, the current status of the health insurance fund, and Susie is going to help us understand what all that means. So like I said, we're going to talk about big picture and terminology, get into the demographic breakdown, what type of plans do we have and who's on them. We're going to review the health plans that we have. We're going to review some of the claims data so that tells the story of the health insurance fund. The financial review is directly tied to the claims data. And then we're going to talk about what we do next with premiums. So big picture terminology, as we said, Lewis County is self-insured, meaning we manage our own premiums and claims. Our premiums completely support our claims. It's a fairly simple system. What people pay in the county and employees needs to be enough to cover the medical claims that go out. Okay. We cover via union contract, collective bargaining. We cover our employees, their spouses and dependents, and retirees. Excelis manages our claims, billing, and customer service. GKG is our consultant for plan design and insurance management. That's Robert and Susie. And Milliman is our actuarial consultant. So they give us the data that projects forward what we can expect to see based on our demographics and claims history. Susie, why don't you cover these ones here?
Sure. So premiums or premium equivalents are the amounts that are going into the fund and need to be adequate to cover both claims and expenses for the plan year. Your claims are the expenses incurred each time somebody receives a service from a contracted or non-contracted provider. A deductible is an amount that the participant is required to pay first before the health plan begins to pay. So some plans have deductibles on them and some don't. Some services are subject to deductibles and some are not. It depends entirely on the plan design. And a copay is a fixed amount that is required each time somebody receives a particular service that requires a copay. So sometimes there's an office visit copay, for example, where you'd pay $15 every time you walk into the doctor's office.
Okay. So we have 1,055 employees and retirees that are insured by the county. We just moved 405 of those who are over the age of 65 to a Medicare Advantage plan. That just happened last fall and was effective January 1st of this year. We have 280 retirees that were hired before 1991. That is significant because those employees hired before 1991 do not pay anything on a monthly basis. They have free health care. Their premium is zero, with the county covering 100%. Most of those folks were based on the fact that it was hired before 1991. Most of them are over 65 and have been moved to the Medicare Advantage plan. We have 1,850 total covered lives under our plan. So that means employees to spouses, dependents, everybody. It's also a note that we have an incentive program that if you do not take our insurance, we will pay you $1,000 opt out to not take it. We just increased that with our largest collective bargaining unit to $2,000. Some counties are much higher than that, and you can begin to understand why. So Susie, can you help us understand our three current plans that we have?
Sure. So the first of which is the PPO. This is a custom plan. And you've got almost 70% of your enrollment in this plan. It is only 2 tiers, so single or family. There are 3 benefit levels. So there's a domestic network, in-network, which would be the Excelis network, and then out-of-network benefits if somebody goes to a non-participating provider. So within the domestic network, there are very few copays, very little cost, if any. It is nearly free insurance. These benefits are negotiated with the union. And recently, there were some changes made to those contracts so that no new members will come on to the plan going forward. So the enrollment in that plan will not grow from this point forward. Yeah, so the visual you see in the bottom right-hand corner gives you an idea of the richness of the plan. So if you were to go out to the New York State marketplace, all health plans are categorized according to metal level. So what we've done here is show you the richness of the PPO in comparison to the metal level. So this would be what we would call platinum. So it's as rich as you can get according to those levels. And then the monthly premiums up top are the current premium equivalents before any increase is considered.
This is probably the main the main plan, we're at 68% of employees now. That was much higher before we moved the retirees. Last year, I would have given this presentation, and the percentage would have been 90% because a lot of the folks that moved to Medicare Advantage were under this plan. So it's by far the most popular.
Okay, the second choice folks have is the hybrid. So we've got about 28% of folks enrolled here. This plan has 3 enrollment tiers, so there is an opportunity to carry a 2-person tier, which helps folks to save some money if they're in that scenario carrying either just one child or a spouse. There are some co-pays here. There are also some small deductible amounts. So here we're shifting some of the costs away from the plan to the member. This plan was introduced as new in 2017, and it has very recently been added to the list of plans that has to be negotiated now with the union. And up top again are the numbers as they currently sit. And then the richness on this plan is a gold. So still very, very strong benefit, but not as rich as the PPO.
So we get a lot of comparisons. Folks like to say, well, why is our health plan so much more expensive than, say, the schools or Kraft? Really, when you're thinking of more apples to apples, this hybrid plan is more in line with other health insurance in our area. Okay. So the PPO plan is kind of platinum on its own. This is really more of an apples to apples comparison, really.
Okay, and then the third choice that folks have is the high deductible plan. You have a very small percentage of folks enrolled here despite its richness, if you will. This one is also 3-tiered, but there is funding coming to folks enrolled in this plan in the form of an HSA or health savings account contribution. So the deductible here for a single enrollment is $2,000, and for a 2-person or family, it's $4,000. If folks take a certain number of steps that are related to wellness, they can actually draw down that full $2,000 and cover that deductible. That one was also added in 2017 and was also added to the list that it's now got to be negotiated with the union. So you can see 2 bars now when we look at the metal levels. Without the HSA, this would stand as a silver because that deductible is relatively low in the scope of things. We have them as high as $7,000. So a $2,000 is still a pretty strong benefit. When you layer the HSA funding on top of it, it goes right up to gold. So you've got 2 plans, hybrid and high deductible, very different structurally, but very similar in terms of their richness.
So I don't mind sharing. This is the plan that I'm on as a young single employee with no dependents and, knock on wood, relatively, healthy. I started building up the HSA with county contributions when I started here, and my account now would cover multiple years of deduction. So at this point, I'm basically completely self-insured unless I had multiple catastrophic incidences. Okay. So this is just the distillation of a lot of the information that you already saw, but you can see I think the important thing to point out here would be the total annual costs. So this is getting to be quite expensive. You can see employee, county, and then total, okay, down there at the bottom. So, the PPO family plan is already a $31,000 benefit that the county is responsible for $23,000 for. That puts a lot of pressure on the hospital and the county to be competitive on wages when we're already contributing an additional $23,648 of benefits. And it's expensive for the employee as well, right? And this is before we get into increases this year. Questions at this point? Okay. Oh, go ahead, Jenny. I can't say with certainty that everyone that was hired before 1991 is retired and is over 65. Right. Right. Well, no, if they were over 65, they did go to United Healthcare, but we're still paying 100% in that case. Yes. Yep. Yep. That was the demographic that was the most perturbed because they were currently paying zero and would continue to pay zero and just had to deal with the inconvenience of changing plans. We got relatively positive feedback from those that were hired before, or excuse me, after 1991 because their bills went down significantly. Okay, big picture, as we said before, what we pay in has to cover what comes out in claims. Since January 1st, 2023, we have been out of balance by about $1.8 million. Since last year's 15% premium increase, which went into effect on June 1st, medical claims have outpaced premiums by $760,000. So when we get into the actuarial discussion here of projection forward, this is something to remember because we said last year we picked in the middle of the road, 15%. And your actuaries will tell you there's a 50% chance that's not going to be enough. Okay. So we shaded on the wrong side of that projection a little bit into this year. And then our self-insurance fund, you guys receive monthly updates on that. But that has, you passed a resolution already last month to give us the authority to do some temporary loaning authority from the general fund. So here's some information right from the HPMR. Susie, can you talk about just the next few slides and some of our utilization? Because utilization is important to understanding the finances.
Yeah, so just to clarify, the time period we're looking at here is the plan year that began June 1, 2022 and finished May 31, 2023. So the last complete plan year that we had. There's a ton of detail here, but just to kind of call out the highlights. So what you're seeing here is percent of members and plan costs. So, I think what's striking is that a very, very small percent of membership drives the most significant percentage of costs. And those are our high cost claimants. That's what you're seeing running across the bottom. At the tippy top are the number of members that have incurred zero in total costs. That's not a good thing because we want every single member on this plan receiving their preventive care, right, to keep them healthy. If they've got zero in claims, it means they're receiving no preventive care. So you really don't want that number to be anything but zero, receiving zero. And then it goes into the demographics of what those folks that are incurring $0 are. So average age is just about 35. 78% of that group is male. A quarter are subscribers, meaning you've got lots of dependents that are not receiving care. But again, the most striking piece there is the bottom. And I don't have my glasses, which is causing me to struggle terribly. So Ryan, if you could tell me what percentage to present.
So the reason we wanted to include this particular graphic, which is in your report, is because you can see both ends of the spectrum. So on the one hand, you've got 32% of members that make up less than 1% of total spend. Okay, so 33% of people that take our healthcare make up only 1% of total healthcare spend. On the other hand, you have 9% of members who make up close to 60% of spend, with the very bottom 3% accounting for 43% of spend. So health outcomes at the very bottom there are the significant driver of, some of the problems we've had financially.
Okay, so the next slide now begins to dig into those high cost claimants. So that bottom bar that we were just referring to. So if you look, so the light blue is your prior plan here. The royal blue is the current plan cost. So you can see that our high cost claimants, which is any claimant over driving $100,000 or more, you can see it jumped from 4.1 million to almost 5.5. So that is a very significant change from year to year. And then it breaks it down into the arenas where the majority, and you can see what's driving. So pharmacy is a big driver, as well as inpatient and outpatient care. That's specific to your high cost claimants.
So the highlighted note on the bottom there, last year, this plan year, we spent about $17 million in total healthcare costs. 5.4, almost 5.5 of that was from only 20 or so high cost claimants. So that's 31%, driven by these extreme high cost claimants.
Okay, so this graphic shows you the number of high-cost claimants that we had in the prior periods. So you can see 1 year prior, we were sitting at 20. For the current, also, and when we say current, we mean June 1, 22 through May 31, 23. You can see that the number of high-cost claimants is the same, but the expenditure is significantly greater. So more serious treatments being required.
Yeah. Current, as Susie said, actually refers to last plan year. If you want to talk about this plan year, right now, we are at, I believe, 23 or 24 high cost claimants. So we've even increased since the last plan year. Go ahead, Susie.
Okay, and this one shows you your most prevalent chronic condition. So what's driving utilization? These things may not end up on your high cost claimant list, but they're certainly drivers. And some of these are very much conditions that can be managed or impacted by wellness initiatives. So you can see hypertension, the total cost is up there, depression and anxiety, diabetes, heart disease. So at the end of the presentation, you're going to see a recommendation around wellness. And this is exactly what you're trying to drive downwards.
I think the other thing to point out when, people would like to compare our plan to other plans in the area or other plans in general. If you look at our plan, which is the prior and current, right? That's our plan. Mm-hmm. Comparison is Excelis's entire book of business or similarly sized. Unionized plans, okay? So similarly unionized plans like ours. I added that column to the right myself because it's important to point out that our health outcomes are a big factor here. Cholesterol disorders, yes, it's affecting 640 members. That's 41% higher than Excelis's book of businesses in comparable plans. Look at hypertension, diabetes, we're 86% higher than Excelis's comparable book of business. COPD, 78% higher. Congestive heart failure, we're more than double. So these add up year over year over year, and a lot of these folks, unfortunately, will become your high-cost claimants, right? And then the last thing to note is $1.3 million, if you add up that total cost column, that makes up 7.5%, nearly 8% of the entire plan. So the best way to get a discount would be to just get a little help. If we could just get in line with the Excelis comparison, it'd be a nice discount.
So other employers have better health outcomes in those areas than Lewis County's population does.
Must have some program in place to get those results. Or it's just, they just insure a different group of people?
Yes. Yes, or they may have wellness programs in place that are driving improved outcomes, biometric screenings to catch those things early. The county does do biometric screenings, but the participation could be improved significantly to catch more people. So maybe, these are known conditions. The worst ones are the unknowns. Right. So if you've got somebody who's walking around with undiagnosed hypertension, what's going to happen? They're going to have a stroke at some point, and then that becomes a high cost claimant. They could have a stroke, I should say. So it's not that Excelis is doing something different. It's that the population is different. Does that help answer?
Yeah, I guess I'm just trying to figure out why we don't have that in place here too. We do.
It's not something that's in place. It's Excelis works with many, many different employers. This is in other employers comparable to us. That's their average health outcomes, that comparison. Right. See what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Well, part of that is our plan design. So there is no incentive to participate in wellness if you're buying a plan that is no copays, no deductibles, no coinsurance, because in other plans you can get rewarded. Like for me, I'm on the HSA. We do reward HSA participants for participating in wellness initiatives. The only way to reward people that 68% that are on the PPO is to increase costs, right? So if our main goal is to try to keep costs containable, adding rewards programs for people that are already getting a $30,000 a year benefit, that's what we haven't quite figured out yet how to do. Okay, so this is our fund balance. This chart should look somewhat familiar because it's very similar to last year. You can see where we would have been last year at this time, Q1 2023. Last year we implemented a 15% premium increase, and we said at that time that the 15% premium increase would not increase the fund balance. It would stabilize the fund balance. And by the way, there's a 50% chance that it wouldn't be enough. As you can see here, we've continued to kind of trend in the wrong direction. That 2024 figure is not completely up to date. If it does change almost daily based on premiums that come in, claims that come out. We're under a variety of reimbursement programs for high cost claimants and pharmacy and those types of things. As it stands right now, we're closer to 500,000 than 784. But if you look at the red line there, $2 million, that's where we would like to be, is at $2 million. This is a chart that we came up with. I think it's a good illustration of the history here. So if you look, so basically what this chart shows is what is the difference? What has the difference been between premiums paid in versus claims paid out? And you can see the zero there. That's the line of demarcation, right? So in a perfect world, if we were perfect planners, we would love to see the amount of premiums paid in perfectly match the amount of claims paid out. We can't predict claims, right? We can try, but we're not exactly perfect. But you can see 18, 19, and nearly all of 21 even, we are on most months above the zero line. So claims out was less than premiums in. And that's when we were building that large fund balance, okay? So every month there was more premiums coming in than claims out. Our fund balance went up. You can see that started to change significantly going into about halfway through 2021 and then into 2022. And then 2023, we only had 1 month where our claims were less than premiums. So we're continuing on that trend. The two deep cuts there that you can see that were March 2021 and March 2022, those were the premium holidays that we provided. But again, if you look at where we were fund balance wise during that time, you know, our goal was to try to ease out. I mean, we didn't want to hit $8 million, right? So, you know, hindsight's 2020, but the reality is it wouldn't have made a big difference, because if you look at claims in general, we are certainly trending in the wrong direction on claims. Definitely. Okay, that brings us to this year's renewal and some of the recommendations. Before we get into that, any questions on the past and how we got to this point? Okay, Susie, go ahead.
Okay, so Milliman is the actuarial partner that Gilroy Kernan Gilroy works with on the county's behalf. This is the initial renewal projection for the 2024-2025 plan year. So Milliman is using about 3.5 years worth of Lewis County's actual claims experience, and then they're building in healthcare trend. So taking that experience and moving forward with it to arrive at an anticipated cost for that plan year. So their initial projection is that the health plan without the post-65 retirees, they are not included here, will be almost $17 million. So they take that PEPM, that stands for per employee or per contract per month, and they compare it to what it currently sits at to arrive at the percent change that would be required to cover those anticipated claims and administrative expenses. So the big difference between being in a self-insured environment and a fully insured environment is that in a fully insured environment, a carrier hands you a renewal. And they say, we are going to jack up your premiums by whatever percent, right? That is done to you. And there's nothing you can do to change it. This is not being done to anybody. It's simply an estimation of the funding that will be needed to cover anticipated claims and expenses. Does that make sense? So that's a big number. This is also included in every year's projection. What they will do is they will show us what is expected. So there, oh my goodness, my glasses. There's the 25% in the middle. And then they will also provide a thank you, that's helpful. Conservative budget. So if you wanted to be incredibly conservative and plan for the worst, right, you could levy a significantly larger increase. If you wanted to be aggressive and say, well, we don't anticipate that it's going to be that bad, or we've got so many programs in place to improve the health of our workforce that are beginning to take hold, or we have a reserve that will enable us to support a variance, then you could go less. Ryan indicated before, even with the expected, there is a 50% chance that we will go either above or below this, right? Because healthcare is unpredictable. It's part art, part science. So the 25%, again, is right in the middle. That is what is recommended, but there's a range.
I'd like to point out that there is a resolution that was adopted in 2018 that says the Board of Legislators will govern the health plan based on actuarial recommendations. There was a slight deviation from that, I would say, in 2015 and 16. But since then, we have stayed true to the actuarial recommendations. The other thing I'd like to point out is that we did build in to both the hospital and the county budget a 7.5% increase in premiums. So as I was mentioning, since 2018, we have stuck to the actuarial recommendations. The blue line is what we adopted. The yellow and orange represent the aggressive and conservative that you just saw. So we took this, basically this exact graphic and then just mapped it out. So, you could see in 2020, we probably shaded a little bit aggressive, but beyond that, we have really stayed right in the middle of the recommendation. So, we have been sticking to that policy of going with the actuarial recommendation in the past. Susie, anything to add on that?
No.
Okay. Okay, so if we do adopt a 25% increase, which is the center recommendation, right? Expected recommendation, not conservative or aggressive, this is what it would do to the health plans. So these numbers are with the 25% increase. You can see the monthly totals are at $821 for a family plan. That's about a $160 a month increase, I believe, for the PPO family plan. And it brings the total employee contribution up to $9,800. I believe the previous one was $7,000 something. The county total goes up to $29,000, nearly $30,000 of employee benefit, okay, for one plan. Total cost for the PPO family, $39,000. You can see it becomes significantly less depending on the type of plan that you choose. Yes, please.
So just a reminder that these numbers are reflective of the collectively bargained percent share, which is 75-25 across all tiers. So those contributions would be considered, especially for a dependent tier, significantly better than a benchmark. Yes.
Ryan, the 25%, does that include the 7.5% you already built in?
No. So two different things. This is applying 25% increase to the plan. We'll get into how that affects our budget here in a minute, but for our budget impact, you'll have to subtract the amount that we already included, basically. But I've got a slide on that. Hold on. So here's what it does to your, here's kind of a history, okay? This is not the first time that we faced steep increases. From 2015 through 2017, we went up over 50% during that period. We cooled it down a little bit, and that's when our fund balance was starting to catch up and grow. We cooled that down through 18, 19, 20, and 21, and into 2022, and then we had to start going up again. So this is the PPO plan monthly premium. You can see the difference between a family and a single. Then you can see the cost to an employee, okay? So we're getting to the point here where it begins to get quite expensive. I forgot to update my graph there, but the true number is $821 a month, so that would be even steeper there on the orange. But the point I'm trying to make here on the right is that, our PPO, if one of our employees has the PPO family plan, that's nearly 19% of if they have an average salary, 19% of their gross income before taxes and retirement, okay? Jeff Hellinger has a graphic that he made that I really like, that shows basically employees, basically their first $5 an hour that they're working, or $4.90 an hour are going towards health insurance if they have the PPO family plan. Budget implications. Back to Joan's question. So we did budget increase, but obviously we didn't budget a 25% increase. So this will be an additional $600,000 to our budget in addition to what we already put in, right? So $600,000 is roughly 1% of our overall budget. For Lewis County Health System, it's going to be about $1.3 million unbudgeted increase, or roughly 1.5% of the overall budget. The reason I add 1% of the overall budget is because this won't take effect until June 1st. Okay. So it's only 6 months worth of an increase. And I would like to think that we build in enough cushion in our budget that we shouldn't need a budget transfer, is what I'm saying. We should be able to absorb a 1% increase throughout if you spread it out across all of our operations, right? So we don't budget quite that tightly, right? Okay. Health plan savings cost initiative. So I asked Susie to pull together this slide because I think it is really, really important to point out that, the county has not been sitting on our hands. We have been doing everything that is within our power, every cutting edge tool that has come across our radar at conferences. Eric and I, 2 of these items were things that we discovered at conferences, things that Susie and Robert have brought to our attention, things that Excelis have brought to our attention. Anything that has come across our radar that could potentially save money, again, that is within our control. We don't have control over plan design. That requires union negotiation. But anything that is within our control, we have done. So I'd like Susie to kind of hit that and just, help us understand that we really have been quite active in trying to control costs.
Okay, so the first several of these initiatives are related to the pharmacy spend. So the first of which are what we call edits, pharmacy edits, or utilization management programs, and they are standard in the industry, but there are some employers who do not have them, believe it or not. So those are prior authorizations, step therapy, quantity limits, generic advantage, and then mandatory mail order was something that was added, I don't know, four years ago, maybe. So you've probably experienced those yourselves, right? Filling a prescription at the pharmacy. The second, the Save on SP is very specific to specialty drugs. So that program attempts to draw down any manufacturer's assistance that is available out there to help reduce the county's spend and the employees' spend. Rational Med is an alert system which helps pharmacists ensure they're not duplicating or causing drug interactions. So that's not only a money saver, it's also a safety measure. The concierge program is where Excelis actually reaches out to a doctor and says, hey, could we consider this alternate lower cost medication with the same clinical outcomes? So that's another, that's not the doctor doesn't have to comply. So it's Excelis attempting to convince them that there is a lower cost alternative without jeopardizing care. The next one, retiree drug subsidy. So because, and this will change now that the post-65ers have come off of the self-insured plan, but in the past, the government has provided a subsidy to Lewis County's health plan as a reward for you covering their prescription drugs. So that's what RDS stands for. The government allows those drug subsidies to be reopened for years past, meaning you go and relook at the numbers and see if we've drawn down every penny that's available for the government. So we've done that multiple years and pulled down more money that was not grabbed, if you will. The second to last is in engagement with Remedy Analytics, which is a RX consulting firm. So they, on behalf of the county, beat up Excelis, if you will, to improve the RX contract terms. So better discounts, better rebates, and then they're auditing to ensure those promises are being kept on a go-forward basis. And then the last and most recent initiative would be the Medicare eligible retirees moving to a fully insured Med Advantage plan through the Broome County Purchasing Alliance. So that's transferring the risk from the county's self-insured health plan to a fully insured United Healthcare plan. And there is also a state shared services match that is available this 1 year that is going to be pulled down. It's anticipated to be more than $2 million. So those are initiatives that are in place or have been put in place recently. Want to go to the next slide?
Yep. I'd just like to add on Remedy Analytics, we were the first Excelis client to go down that road, and they were not pleased to open up their book of business, even though it's our data. And since we've done that, other people have followed suit. So like I said, we really have tried to be on the cutting edge of this stuff. So what are some things that we could do to provide relief, but we cannot do unilaterally? So these are things that would require union cooperation and negotiation. We have not been able to achieve some of these things that would provide some immediate relief to the employees and the county.
So the first are health plan benefit design changes. So adding deductibles where they don't currently exist or increasing deductibles to a greater amount, co-pays, co-insurance, which is when you share a percent of the cost of a service. We could increase out-of-pocket maximums so that the annual exposure to the participant is a little bit greater. And you can also impose limits on certain services. PT would be an example of that. All of those things drive cost savings for the plan, but they require cooperation from the union. The second is a pharmacy formulary change. So that's your drug list. Every carrier has its own formulary, and there are open and there are closed formularies. So moving to a closed formulary will drive significant savings. And so your list of covered drugs becomes smaller. And that's not to say that somebody can't get coverage or treatment. It's that they're driving to the lowest cost drugs that are available on the market. Health plan premium contribution percentages, again, it's 75-25. That is close to the benchmark for a single tier, significantly above the benchmark for a dependent tier. Spousal surcharge is a census management strategy that we have groups using in an attempt to drive spouses off of the plan onto another employer's plan. So if a spouse works for another company in town, there's an incentive to take that coverage and come off of the Lewis County Health Plan. And you do that by incentivizing them through the pocket. And then the last, Ryan alluded to this before, you can link contribution percentages to wellness participation and outcomes. So you'd have a wellness rate and a non-wellness rate. So GKG has had a wellness rate, non-wellness rate in place for many years. And ours is not only linked to participation in wellness programs, but health outcomes. So if we're not able to obtain goals around cholesterol and glucose and all that good stuff, we can't get the money unless we can demonstrate we're working with a physician to attend to that. So those are all things that could drive costs downward for the plan.
Susie, what is the benchmark for health plan premium contribution percentage?
For family, it's closer to 50%. So at 75, that's considerably higher than the benchmark.
Also, is there a reason why the PPO plan just has single and family? You don't have a single plus one? Would that
Yes,
help?
So when we added the two new plans back in 2017, the PPO was two-tiered. But because the hybrid and the high deductible were brand new, we could structure them really any way you wanted to. In looking at The PPO, what happens when you go from 2 to 3 tiers is it drives your family rate straight upwards. So the decision was made to just leave that be and then start from scratch with the 2 new plans.
Part of the challenge is once you start making some of these changes, like the first bullet point there, the health, those deductibles, copays, coinsurance, well, that starts to look a lot like our high deductible plan, or excuse me, our hybrid plan. Then, you look at the bottom bullet there, contribution percentages that are tied to wellness, participation outcomes. Well, that starts to look a lot like our HSA high deductible plan. So there has been reluctance to adjust the PPO because you start adjusting it and it starts looking pretty much like the hybrid. So that's part of the issue. Consultant comparisons. This is based on what Susie and Robert kind of observed generally in their business.
Yes, so these are statistics based on Gilroy Kern and Gilroy's experience for our book this January 1, 2024 renewal. So this is to give some perspective. So our average initial increase, and these are fully insured groups, right? So these are increases coming from the carriers for experience rated groups, which is a group with over 100 lives enrolled on the plan. The average was 17.28 with a high of 27. Then for our block rated groups, which is an employer who has over 100 full-time equivalents, but less than 100 enrolled on the plan, that average was 19.67 with a high of 41. And then for our large self-insured groups, the average was 6 with a high of 15.
One thing that we're putting together, we do have some time here, which we'll get to in a minute, but Caitlin is working to create a nice local comparison so we can kind of see, what folks are paying in other industries around Lewis County. I will tell you right off the bat that it's difficult to find an apples to apples to our PPO plan. There's nobody that has that domestic tier like we have that is essentially free healthcare. Potential options. So I'm not saying that we should do any of these, but Eric and I were brainstorming about what could be done. The first is a 25% increase for all 3 health plans. The second is a different percent increase based on each plan. So we have some actuarial information on that. Essentially, you could make each plan's increase different based on the cost share that they have. That is an option. Utilize general fund to stabilize health insurance fund. That is an option that is available to the legislators. It is not something that I would recommend. And then issue a request for proposals for a fully insured option. Basically, we would close up shop of our self-insurance fund and buy something off the rack. I would tell you that it is unlikely that that'll be cheaper, but you never know. And I think, just my personal opinion, is that it would be unwise to hand off 10% of our expenditures, particularly with the hospital, to a third party that will dictate to us. I think that's a strategic move that may not be the most beneficial in the long run. But they are options, and I wanted to make sure that the legislators were aware of the options. So that is kind of, we couldn't think of anything else. I mean, anything else short of, really renegotiating with the union, but that takes quite a long time. So anyway, next steps. We do have some time for discussion and reflection because, as I said, the plan year doesn't start till June 1st, but we will need a resolution on what we're going to do by April 2nd. Okay, that board meeting is when we're going to have to adopt something. The increase in premiums will begin on June 1st, but they will be reflected in May paychecks. Okay, so that's when that would go into effect. The rate increase is projected to stabilize the fund balance, not increase it. I think that's worth stating, especially, based on the data last year. We went up 15% and it was not enough to keep pace. There is a 50% chance that even with, say, a 25% rate increase, that would not be enough. Okay. Again, this is, same bullet points from last year, and we did adopt this as a goal. So that's good. The county needs to increase focus and investment on employee wellness. That's obvious. And the county needs to work more closely with CSEA to make adjustments to the PPO plan to contain costs. There have been 0 plan changes in over a decade. Think about how much health insurance policy has changed over the last 10, 15 years. Our PPO plan has not changed at all. Other than we did have a very good concession that beginning January 1st of this year, no new employees are eligible for the PPO, which is good. So I believe that's it. We can go back and revisit any of the slides, or I can turn it over to yes. Right, we did add something here. So good point, Susie. Thank you. Last year, we did ask Excelis to quote us. Now, they know our book of business forward and backward. They know our claims. They know our demographics. We asked them to quote us for a fully insured plan. Basically, the same plans we have, but not a self-insured. We would buy it off the rack from them. Last year, our percent increase was 15%. To go to Excelis, it would have been, you can see that far right column, as much as 34% in some cases, nearly doubled for the 2-person hybrid. So, the grass isn't always greener. I guess that's the point. We can get this requoted, or you can put out a full RFP to kind of see what the whole market beyond Excelis would provide. But I did want to remind folks that we did go through this exercise last year as well. So, questions and discussion.
Anyone have any questions or thoughts at this time? I know it was an awful lot thrown to all of us. I guess I could say thank you for the information as much as we don't like the information.
We don't like delivering it.
Ryan, is there a tentative date saying the return on our investment for the Medicare Advantage plan where we have the match roughly $1 to
Yeah, that'll come in
$2
2025. So it's part of our 2024 shared services plan, and you can't realize the savings.
Correct.
And because we just implemented January 1st, so you have to realize the savings in order to get the state
for 1
match.
calendar year.
Right. So you'll get the match in 2025.
Okay.
Right. Effective January.
Projecting.
Yeah, but the match isn't until 25.
If nobody has anything right now, we thank you very much for the information. We'll think about it and we'll have to discuss it further.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Guess we move along to draft resolutions.
Okay, the first one is establishing employee standard workday for all employees and reporting days worked to the New York State and local employers' retirement system.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Opposed, nay. Carried.
Authorizing agreement with Coughlin Printing to develop up to 25 municipal websites and their associated email addresses to provide easy access for members of the community and to access secure and reliable email addresses of officials, and to provide for Coughlin Printing to bill the county based upon time, materials, and overhead for a total cost estimate of $198,868.
Any questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman,
198,000, that's if they go the full 25 and all the emails, is it prorated or?
Yes.
just to refresh for those that are new, was that I know it was a state grant, was that an RFP for that?
There was an RFP done when we did our initial website revamp, and that was a part of it.
Part of that too?
Yep.
Anything else? All in favor, aye. Opposed? Carried.
Authorizing agreement with General Code to digitally codify 23 Lewis County municipalities using the company's eCode 360 platform, and to provide general code to bill the county based upon time, materials, and overhead for a total cost estimated not to exceed $345,000.
Questions or comments?
Why is the difference in the numbers between 25 and 23? What's the websites versus codify?
The Codify is another program that we're helping to push out to towns and villages as well. They, as many of you guys probably have experienced, depending on who the clerk is or who the supervisor is, the box of local laws and documents may travel around. The goal of this is to get a universal codification of all the towns and villages.
I understand that, but one number says 25 and another says 23. I'm wondering who's not going to be in it.
Oh, I don't know. Yeah.
I was just curious about why the numbers are different.
I'm sorry, Benny. I didn't understand what you meant. Gotcha.
Anything else? All in favor, aye. Opposed? Carried.
Awarding bid and authorizing agreement under the countywide design guidelines project to Insight Architecture LLP of Perry, New York, at a cost not to exceed $32,000, and to include providing reports to county departments involved in the project with an anticipated completion date on or about July 31st, 2024.
Any questions or comments? All in favor, aye. Opposed? Carried.
Authorizing the Planning and Community Development Department to submit the online application to Empire State Development's CAO for up to $30 million under Municipal Infrastructure Program funding to develop open access and last mile fiber optic broadband infrastructure to connect unserved households and businesses with high-speed internet with the assistance of DANK.
Questions or comments? All in favor, aye. Opposed? Carried.
Approving correction of tax bill pursuant to the franchise agreements between Time Warner Cable, TCI, and various towns to charge back to towns the total amount of $10,796.09.
Questions or comments?
Is Time Warner still in business or is it Spectrum? Okay, I didn't know what this is. Okay.
Anything else? All in favor, aye. Opposed? Carried.
There is one late draft resolution that was handed out, and this is urging New York State legislators to advocate on behalf of SUNY community colleges for increased funding in the fiscal year 25 state budget.
Tom, can I be heard on that briefly? This was a request from Jefferson Community College that we consider this Jefferson county has already adopted this, and they're asking counties across the state to weigh in on this issue for community colleges.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments on it? All in favor, aye? Opposed? Carried. Don't have any motions. Need an executive session. Any other business at this time? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Jeff, second. Vince, all in favor, aye. We are adjourned. Now we can think about insurance.